Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. Yay! It's Tuesday, and it feels like it should be Thursday, or perhaps even Friday, because I don't know how the week managed to put 7 days into 2 days, but it was successful in doing so, and I'm tired. It has been a doozy of the last couple of days. All sorts of fun stuff. Lots of worky things, doing worky things. But I hope you all are doing well. I'm not in bad spirits. I'm just tired. DCI Banks, good to see you. Good to see you. I was actually about to message you. I had a thought to earlier today to ask you if you were starting new classes yet. And then nothing materialized. I didn't send much of anything today other than emails to students. So there's that. Matt, also hello and welcome in. I'm sort of scatterbrained. I was almost late for my own stream. I literally woke up fewer than 30 minutes ago. I decided that I was going to just I just need to put my head down just real quick to just sort of try to shake some of this off. And then I was asleep. I was just gone. And woke up about 26 minutes ago. And then managed to look this okay. Fun times, right? Fun times. What up, Cave Geek? Good to see you. So welcome everybody to Adventures in History, where we talk about history and we have a good time. We try to make fun out of history, and sometimes we just make fun of history. But that's okay, because they're all dead and they're not going to get offended. So tonight we are doing viewer request stream, and we are continuing a series, I guess, that we started years ago. I don't think we've done Crusade now in almost 2 years. But we did the first Crusade and the second Crusade, and now we're doing the third Crusade, and I suspect that we'll eventually get through more of them. I don't know. Viewer requests are sort of whatever you all want, so if you want to do more, we can do more. If you don't want to, we don't have to. That's fine, right? But this is a viewer request asked for and redeemed by Paradox Moose, who I hope is at least around to perhaps see the stream that he requested. So maybe, who knows? If not, I guess then we'll have to just hope that he gets to see the VOD. I'm noticing here that something is a bit askew. I need to do this a little bit. Is that correct? Or how do I need to handle that? Do I need to do this? Yeah, there we go. I don't know why that was bothering me, but it was. Steve Sketches is rating with a big honkin' party of 87. Are you not entertained? Is that not why you are here? What up, Steve Sketches? How's it going? And Nick Slottel's in the crew. Dusky Woods Art, hello. How's things? Welcome in for the first time. Got a raid and run. Your son's having a conniption. I understand from seeing other kids have a conniption, not from personal experience. But Steve, I love you, brother. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Call me if you need to. Don't forget to Discord if you don't feel like calling. But I hope you're doing well, and I hope that your son's conniption is short-lived. Cliff McAllister Lane, what is up? Welcome in. Hope you're doing well. For those of you that have no idea who I am, I'm sure that Steve gave you a little bit of a spiel before you came here, but welcome. My name is Shane. I teach history and sociology for a living, and on stream here we usually talk history, which is not boring. It's just taught by boring people, right? Oh, Steve gave no spiel. What's up, your rent? Dig it. Your rent is here. I hope you're not due. But welcome in, welcome in. False hope. He gave us false hope. Okay, that's fair. Maybe sometimes Maybe sometimes Steve says too many nice things about me that there's no legitimate way that I could ever live up to. And I can appreciate that coming from a friend. But I really like history, and it's something that I'm passionate about. And because of that, I don't like teaching it the boring, like, baby kind of way. And we're doing a viewer request tonight. So this is something that the viewers of the stream asked for. Specifically, Paradox Moose redeemed this one. And we've done the first Crusades before, and now we're doing the third Crusade. Dun, 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 dun. False hope that Steve gave a spiel. Oh, I see. Well, sometimes Steve's just like, I gotta go. We're gonna go raid. Dun, 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 dun. Dusky Woods Art, thank you so much for the follow, and welcome to the adventure. We're here to have fun and goof off and talk about history, and we're going to start tonight talking about the Third Crusade. We do need a little bit of a background, but I usually give a little bit of a background just in case people are completely unfamiliar with the situation. That's okay. You don't have to know anything about any of this previously to get everything that you would need to know about tonight's story. Basically, after the First Crusade, Christians had reestablished countries in the Middle East. You can see here we've got the Mediterranean Sea, and we've got Christian kingdoms, the County of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch, the County of Tripoli, and the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Bum, bum, bum. And these were established after the First Crusade and made it a little while, right? A little while. We're looking at them in the year 1135. Tripoli as not in Libya. There is a Tripoli in Libya, and the Tripoli that you might be more familiar with from the Song of the Marines is in Africa, but this Tripoli is here in what is modern-day Lebanon. I think part of that might be in Syria, this little piece up here, but I can't remember. But this Tripoli and that Tripoli had some connections, most notably the Phoenicians. Way back in the day, the Phoenicians settled colonies all over that northern African area, so they came from this region. There's a little bit of a nomenclature shared history there. But this is what we're looking at, and the Crusader states had survived for a little while, but by the time we get to what we're at today, they kind of looked like this. They had been basically gobbled up, specifically by this guy named Saladin, Saladin, by the way, is the sort of the anglicized version of this guy's name. In Arabic, it's Salah ad-Din, and I might refer to him as either one of those depending on how my brain is acting. We've got very little of it left. We've got this little bit of Antioch, we've got a little bit of Tripoli, and we've got one little city right here, Tyre. Woo! But that city's actually super important, and we'll come back and talk about that a few times tonight. So what the devil happened? Well, this guy Saladin, who was a Kurdish leader of a group of people called the Ayyubids, who were somewhat in league with another group of people called the Seljuks, who were Turkish, had managed to take over Egypt and then decided, you know what, I should take over all of that other territory as well. This is not going to sit well with the Christians in the region because they had reconquered this area. They thought that they had the dispensation of God to control this region again. And then here comes another Muslim guy that's taking all the land back. And this is going to be especially damaging after a really big battle at a place called Hattin. And this is the battle, if I can type, battle of Hattin. And this is in the year 1187. Hattin is a big old deal because we've got in Hattin sort of the two heavyweights of the region. This is Saladin. This is really the only image of him that we can find, and it's sort of interesting that it's actually on a coin because, again, he was Muslim, and a lot of people sort of have this kind of ideology or this thought that Muslim people never use human images. All they ever do is just like calligraphy or geometric design or something like that. And I really like to show situations with Muslim imagery to sort of try to do my best to combat this ideology. A face with two eyes, yeah, he's looking at you straight, which is sort of weird too, because normally you get coins in profile, right? But we've got here a Muslim coin with a face on it. That is the face of Salah ad-Din, and that's fine, and that's pretty cool. So next time someone says, "Oh no, man, Muslims have never used imagery," you can go, "Oh, there are plenty of examples of historical data where we can actually look at Muslim groups of people that drew pictures and humans and did faces and did all kinds of art with people." It's not just calligraphy. It's not just geometric design. But anyway, Salah ad-Din is fighting the king of Jerusalem, who is this guy. Now, what's interesting here is that his name is Guy, which is spelled in English G-U-Y, but he was French. He's Guy of Lusignan, but he, standing here in the middle, is going to be the guy with the crown. He is the king of Jerusalem. I mean, is it still rare, or is tradition to not depict humans come later? Dun, 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 dun. Billiam Babel, that's a great name. Welcome in. Welcome to the adventure. Thank you so much for the follow. In modern art, in a lot of Muslim places, there has become a tendency to not use any human imagery in art, period. That is being challenged by a lot of younger people, perhaps like Generation X and down. But in conservative areas like Iran, you're still going to be pretty much locked down to no imagery of humans, period. Now, of course, even during this time period, there was, so when I say this time period, I mean like back in the 1100s, there was a pretty strong movement against drawing pictures of Muhammad, but that initial design of we shouldn't really do pictures of Muhammad sort of spreads out over time to we shouldn't really do pictures of humans, period. But if you go to places like Persia or Central Asia, or even here we've got a Kurdish convert to Islam with Salah ad-Din down in Egypt and across Northern Africa, you're going to find people that are drawing images of humans in their art. So just chilling and lurking. Keep up the good work. You can hit the lurk command if you want to. It's kind of cute, or you can just do your thing. But for everybody that's new in the channel, you should feel very, very comfortable here. If you want to chat, do your thing. If you want to ask questions, it's cool. If you want to send me off on some weird historical tangent, that's fine too. Just feel free to participate at whatever level you feel comfortable, right? They call it aniconism. This is correct. Let me catch up. I thought it was just no image of God. Yes, that's still true, Nixlotl. We're definitely at no time supposed to be doing a lot of pictures of Muhammad, though some groups do, which is still sort of scary to a lot of people. There are some groups, especially people with a lot of Persian influence and people in Central Asia, that will draw pictures of Muhammad. It's very rare even in the ancient times, but it's there. It's not completely non-existent. Hey, Anogar, what's up? The graphic user interface of Jerusalem. Yes. That would be GUI, the GUI of Jerusalem, right? They believe that the human form is only of God's creation. There we go. Yeah, and it calls back to idolatry. This is a big issue that happened in the earliest parts of Islam as it was spreading out of the Arabian Peninsula. They encountered a lot of Christians who were using iconography, especially in the Eastern church at the time, or the eastern part of the church at the time. There was only just one big Christian church. Icons were very, very popular. These are sort of smaller pictures of saints, and they were very popular. And this was seen by most Muslims as an attempt at creating a human sort of object of worship, right? That we were taking our focus off of God, who is the one that should only be worshipped, and putting that on people. So therefore, the icons, especially in the Byzantine world, were considered very frequently as idols. And this is actually true inside of the Byzantine world as well. There are multiple Byzantine emperors that have a really strong anti-icon position, and there are multiple phases of what historians refer to as iconoclasm within the Byzantine Empire, where different leaders will basically ban the use of icons and burn them and destroy them. So all of this sort of just lumps in together, right? What's up, Lumpy? Good to see you, my friend. That's okay, Matt. It's all good, man. It's all good. Shiny stuff is pretty cool. I dig it too, right? So portraits of people on coins is seen as false worship. Yeah, exactly. You're with me, DC. That is correct. Anyway, so at the Battle of Hattin, we've got the forces of the Kingdom of Jerusalem under Guy, and we've got the forces of the Ayyubids under we've got the forces of the Ayyubid group from Egypt under Salah ad-Din, and they beat the junk out of the Christians. The Kingdom of Jerusalem is pretty much going to collapse at this point. They lose the Battle of Hattin. Guy does manage to escape and gets away for a little while, but then Salah ad-Din chases him back to Jerusalem, and then Salah ad-Din takes Jerusalem. And in the process of taking Jerusalem, the city, Guy gets captured, and Salah ad-Din actually ransoms him back to the Christian world. But what this does is it completely destabilizes the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and it basically eliminates it as a thing. It's still there technically a name because Guy is still alive and still has a claim to the region, but let's just be for real. The Kingdom of Jerusalem doesn't very much exist anymore. Salah ad-Din continues, and he takes a big fortified city at Acre. Acre was one of the largest fortified cities in the region, and it was sort of a central outpost for a lot of the other military efforts that the Kingdom of Jerusalem was trying to use to prop up its territory. So when Acre falls, Guy is really, really interested in trying to take it back. So Guy tries to retake the city of Acre, but only ends up being able to put it under siege in 1189. But what we've got going on here, if we just sort of zoom out a little bit, we've got the biggest Christian crusader state that got beaten very soundly by a smaller but more experienced force of Ayyubids under Salah ad-Din. And this is going to send a very big shockwave through the Christian world, because everybody thought that it would be the Kingdom of Jerusalem that sort of fell last. But here it is falling out. Another Steve raid. This is Steve Nigerian. What up, Steve Nigerian and friends? I just got raided by Steve Sketches, so there was a whole bunch of Stevens there, and here's another Steven. If I got raided by Steve Conley, that would be all of the streaming Steves that I know. I think Steve actually streamed earlier today, so probably not a raid from Steve Conley, but cool. What up, Steve Nigerian? How's it going, man? I guess I should have done this for Steve Sketches as well, but everybody came in with Steve Sketches, so I figure everybody sort of knew him. But if you don't know Steve Nigerian art, you should totally go give him a follow, especially if you were hanging out in Steve Sketches' room. Oh, that's a horrible word. English is such a bad language. Anyway, you should go follow Steve Nigerian, who is good guy, smart dude, knows a lot about history, knows a lot about what's going on in the world, and likes Lord of the Rings stuff too. So if you dig hanging out here, or if you dig art, you should go follow that guy, because he's just friggin' good, and you should totally have a good time over there. Yeah, Salah ad-Din lost a few men, but you should have seen the other Guy. Aloha, Frank. What's going on, brother? It's good to see you, man. The Council of Steves has decided to provide me with viewers. All of the Steveses is. How's it going, Steve? I love rants. That's fair, right? Was this the crusade that happened that time there was the two popes, or that other time there was the two popes? What's up, love cuppers? There was only one pope at a time during this crusade, if that helps. There were 3 popes total, because one of them called it then promptly, well, no, actually, to get sort of back on track, we just had this big battle called the Battle of Hattin in 1187, And when word of the loss of the Kingdom of Jerusalem got back to Europe, the story says that Urban III, who at that time was the Pope, got so distraught that the Kingdom of Jerusalem had fallen that he fell dead. Complex Zero, thank you so much for that follow. Welcome to the adventure. Did I finish introducing myself for Steven's people? Hey everybody, I'm Shane. I teach history and sociology. We're goofing around, we're talking about history stuff, and we're covering the Third Crusade, which is a viewer request show. So anyway, we get word back to Europe. Urban III, who was the Pope at the time, hears that the Kingdom of Jerusalem has fallen, and according to the story, he immediately has a massive shock and falls stone dead, right? You know, because that's what one does when you're the Pope and the Kingdom of Jerusalem falls. You just die, right? Followed because what I do see there in the background. Oh yeah, all the Gundams. Oh yeah, man. I dig the Gunpla. I'm currently working on this guy, the Supernova Sandrock. That's what I was doing last time I was streaming. I streamed on Saturday, and we got this far, right? And that took about 3 hours because it needed a little bit of trimming. Supernova kits don't always go together like, you know, as easy as some of the Bandai stuff. So it took a little bit of provoking and trimming and clipping and sanding to get that. But it looks good. I like the colors a lot. So there we go. Yeah, Gundam kits are expensive. The beauty of streaming is that I have an amazing group of people that are incredible and subscribe to the channel, and they buy all my plastic addiction for me. Because it turns into content, right? You all really are awesome, by the way. I appreciate that. Did I say hey to everybody? Tuna, I did not say hello to you. Speaking of awesome people, Big Tuna Neil, what up? Good to see you. And dragons. Yes, Steven Jerian is all about some dragons. I'm shocked usually they fight when there's competing popes. For real. Watched a 5-hour video about all to know about Greek mythology. Yeah, man. Greek mythology is legit. I freaking love Greek mythology. What's up, Ivan Neo? Is the Third Crusade the one where Richard Pryor's accumulating all the fractional pennies? I don't think so. I think that's Office Space, but I'm not 100% sure. What's up, Ivan? Mountain Dragon just got in. What up, Mountain Dragon? How's it going? Not just any Mountain Dragon. The OG Mountain Dragon. So Urban III hears the news, dies. So then we get a new pope, and we're going to get Gregory the Seventh. And Gregory the Seventh goes, crap, what are we going to do? The Kingdom of Jerusalem has just fallen. What should we do? We should call a crusade. So he calls a crusade. Now, if we're going to call a crusade, we need to figure out who's going to go on this crusade. And there was a guy that was sort of big in the world, big scary dude with a humongous army that was really loyal to the Pope. And that was this dude, seated here in the middle. This is the Holy Roman Emperor. His name is Frederick. He's given the most amazing nickname Barbarossa because he was a bit of a barbarous gent. He was rather brutal and was exactly the sort of guy that you would want to lead an army against bad guys. These are his sons, by the way. This is Henry the Sixth, I believe, who takes over after him, and his son Frederick of Swabia, who's going to end up being a pivotal guy later on in our story. From Age of Empires 2, you remember that guy from the game? Heck yeah, man. This is just bringing video games to real life, right? Barbarossa, because he cut hair as a hobby. Yeah. I get it. That'd be Barbarossa, but I'm still down. We could just gloss that over by saying we're anglicizing it. We're bringing it from German into French, right? If it works with other things, why not work now? It's Italian. There we go. Okay. So, Gregory sends word to Barbarossa, and he's like, hey, Frederick, I want you to sort of spearhead a crusade to go retake territory. Can you do that? And Frederick Barbarossa's like, heck yeah, I can kill some people that aren't Christians. I would love to do that. So, theoretically speaking, Frederick Barbarossa is going to kind of be in charge of this crusade. But this is where things get a little squirrely. Because Gregory picks Frederick Barbarossa to lead the crusade, and then Gregory the Seventh promptly dies. Yeah. And then we get another pope, whose name is Clement, who's not as friendly with Frederick. It's not anti-Frederick, but is also not necessarily as pro-Frederick. I mean, they're getting along, and you can't really stop Frederick Barbarossa from going on crusade, but there was hope that other countries would go as well. And one of the groups that they were trying to deal with that was being a big problem was the French. And the French and the English were basically at each other's throats. And this is going to tie in a little bit to the stuff that we were talking about, ironically, on Thursday last week when we were talking about the Normans, because the King of England at that time was this guy that had just barely gotten onto the throne because he was part Norman, who was running out other Normans. This guy's name is Henry II. He looks like this. Also, Henry II Plantagenet, so he's from the Plantagenet family. He controlled land in England and in France, and France didn't like that. So there was a war going on between Henry II and the King of France. I guess I shouldn't have necessarily switched back over to my ugly mug, and I should have shown you this guy. This is Philip II, who is the King of France. So Philip and Henry are at war with each other. You need the foods. Heck yeah, man, Steven. Go get you some foods. Do your thing, man. Catch you after you get back from MegaCon. Dude, I hope you sell so much stuff that you don't have to bring any product home. Sell out and come back with giant wads of cash, right? So it would be cool if Henry and Philip would put aside their differences and go on crusade together. This fighting between France and England had caused a lot of trouble and was causing a lot of consternation in the West. But, you know, trying to get two people like England and France to stop fighting each other is tough, right? Is a classic. It's exactly a classic, Zero. 100%. If you ever in history have a question that you don't know the answer to, and it said, which two European countries fought in the War of so-and-so, the best guess is England and France, because they rarely ever ended up on the same side. They are almost always at each other's throats. And this is something that's starting around this time period. And again, this is in the 1100s, right? So they have a wonderful 800-year history of beating the junk out of each other. But anyway, the Pope is like, hey, you guys should go on crusade. And they were like, no, we're not going to go on crusade. We're killing each other. Can't you see that? And he's like, but God would really think it would be cool if you guys would go on crusade. And then they're like, you know what? I don't think we really want to do that. So meanwhile, Frederick is trying to build an army, right? So Frederick has got to put together this big old honking army. So what is he going to do? He starts sending out all these letters because Frederick is sort of a planner. He'll totally bash your head in, but he'd like to make sure that he schedules it with you first. You know, make sure you're available, make sure that you have a comfortable time, that you can settle your affairs, etc., etc. So Frederick is literally sending letters to all these people over in the eastern part of Europe and in the Byzantine world and even over into the Muslim world, telling them stuff like, hey, I'm going to be coming with a big army. I want to make sure that you're cool with that. One of the groups of people that he messages are the Hungarians, right? Like, hey, Hungarians, I'm going to be marching a really big army, and we're going to be leaving from, you know, right over here in Holy Roman Imperial territory, and we're going to be marching over, you know, this direction. It would be really cool if we could march through your country. And the Hungarians are like, yeah, I guess that'd be okay. But while you're here, could you settle all of our territorial and lineage issues? Could you settle the fight between the distaff versions of our family? And Frederick's like, it would really just be cool if we could just kind of march through because, God called us stuff. Right. Like, could you guys help the side quest? He's sending stuff to the Byzantines like, hey, Byzantines, I know that we've kind of dirtied you all up in the First and Second Crusade, and we don't really have a lot of trust going on since, we may have excommunicated the leader of your church on our side and stuff like that. And we totally didn't give that land back to you like we said we were going to. But guess what? We're coming with another army. So are you going to be cool and move us over to the Asian side of things with all of your boats? And the Byzantines are like, we hate your guts. If it'll get you out of our territory faster, sure, we'll move you to the other side. We hate your guts. And that's the polite version, because the Byzantines and the Germans actually had the best of the relationships between European countries and the Byzantines. So that was the nice response. If the French had said that, they'd be like, they would receive body parts of the messenger back in a box, right? The Byzantines did not like the French. But Frederick is also messaging the Turks, and he's like, hey, Turkish people, I know that Salah ad-Din is not really your friend. He's supposed to be acting under your control, but I really know that he's doing his own thing and kind of running around and taking territory from you all. If we show up and squash him a little bit, are you guys going to immediately attack us? And the Seljuks are like, so you're going to come kill Salah ad-Din? And he's like, that's the plan. And they're like, okay, cool. We'll just call timeout, right? And we'll go to halftime. And we'll let you do your thing. And then when you kind of get, him dead and out of the way, then maybe we can renegotiate our position, right? So Frederick is sending letters all over the place. And he's also building up a big old army. Now, the Pope says, hey, Frederick, it would be really cool if you would just get on boats and sail, because that would move you through much less territory. It would also be much faster. And you wouldn't necessarily have to deal so much with all of these other countries. We could just get boats. And Frederick's like, Frederick doesn't boat. Frederick walks and rides his horse. And they're like, okay, fine, whatever. So Frederick ends up having to get a lot of his nobles to swear oaths of good behavior to get some of this stuff. Especially the Byzantines are skeptical of a lot of the German nobility. And they're like, okay, that guy specifically by name has to vow before God that he's not going to be a bad person. And Frederick's like, yeah, whatever, we'll get the guy to say the words. But Frederick ends up putting together a fairly sizable army, about 15,000 on foot and about 3,000 knights mixed in that. So it's a fairly decent-sized army for this period of time in the medieval world. The knights were heavy cavalry. This would have been your guys with your mail and your plate with, like the bucket helmets and the lances and stuff like that. This is not an army to laugh at. But what's going on with England and France, right? Operation Desert Shield. He just Zoom called everybody, right? Like, can we get everybody on the same page here? Can we just like WebEx or something? Spain and Dutch, yeah, so if it's past the 1400s, Spain versus the Netherlands is a good guess. Especially once the Netherlands decides to go Protestant. Then it's like lots of Spain. But then also Germany versus the Netherlands, but Spain versus the Netherlands too. Right. So Frederick is going to start marching. What is up with the French and the British? So the Pope eventually badgers them to the table. And he's like, look, you guys are beating the crap out of each other. You're Christians killing Christians. This is not what God wants. God is sad with you. Do you want God to be sad? And Philip II of France is sort of like, if I kill Henry II, would that make God happy? And Henry is like, if I kill every person that's French, would that make God happy? Is he mad because we haven't completely killed each other yet? And the Pope is like, no, he's mad because you're killing each other and you're not killing the bad guys. Look, there are Christians dying in the Holy Land. You should go over there and fight. So the Pope manages to get these people to sit down, and they actually have to kind of have a conference where they show up to, and they both sort of agree together. Like, are you sure you're going to go on crusade? and Philip and Henry both agree in 1188 that they're going to go on crusade. So Henry and Philip both start preparing to go, and then Henry promptly dies. And that's going to leave England in a bit of a weird spot because, their king is dead. So now they have to get a new king, and their new king is this guy. This is Richard II, right here. Richard Coeur de Lion. Richard the Lionheart. Now, he doesn't have the nickname Lionheart yet, but he's about to get that, right? When said like that, a lot of Middle Ages sounds like a goofy skit. That's an apt description of a lot of the Middle Ages. That's actually fairly close to what most of the Middle Ages is. It's just this sort of never-ending skit of Monty Python and or, I don't know, is it Kids in the Hall? Probably not Kids in the Hall. Maybe an old Red Skelton skit or something. I don't know. Anyway, this is Richard II, who ends up taking over in England. So Richard's now going to Men in Tights. Yeah, it's like Men in Tights. I love that movie so much. Mel Brooks is a national treasure. I did not watch any of the History of the World Part 3 stuff or the TV show spinoff thing that they did for that. I know that he was tangentially involved, but I didn't watch any of it. Blackadder is legit. I love me some Blackadder. Blackadder Goes Forth is one of the quintessential British dry humor TV series that I've ever seen, and I freaking love that one. I mean, all of them are good, but the last one where Blackadder is in World War I is so good. It's so good. I also like the one that's sort of like in Tudor Stuart Britain. Specifically, I love the episode where Blackadder tries to get Baldric elected to the Rotten Borough. And they're like, there's this part of the skit where he's trying to fill out the paperwork for Baldric to run for office. He's like, Baldric, yes. What's your first name? And he's like, Sod off. And he's like, and so Blackadder, he looks at him, he's like, what do you mean your name is Sod off? He's like, yeah, when I was young, I'd go up and I'd say, hi, I'm Baldric. And all the other kids would go, yeah, we know, Sod off, Baldric. And so he just puts S Baldric. That's one of my favorite parts of all of Blackadder. I'm getting myself tickled. Anyway, I love Blackadder. Anyway, Richard and Philip are going to agree to go to war, right? Let's be clear, though. Richard and Philip don't like each other. In fact, they hate each other's guts. And as an attempt at smoothing over the differences between Richard and Philip, the church gets involved and agrees that Richard is going to marry Philip's sister. And this is supposed to chill everything out, tone everything down. We're going to be family now, right? We're going to be okay. And this is something kind of begrudgingly agreed to, but we're going to go on crusade and we're going to literally be in a war and we got to be able to at least sort of trust each other. So let's try to do what we can to kind of just chill it out. So, what's going on? The English are going to put together an army of about 9,000. Most of the English army at this point is foot. They have very, very few knights. The French are going to have about 7,000 total and about 1,000 knights. Now, the French and the British decide, or I shouldn't say British, the French and the English are going to sail. So, England is going to sail around, France is going to sail across, but they're going to meet up in Sicily. This is the plan. We're going to meet up in Sicily and then we're going to go over together. So England starts sailing and they have to stop in Portugal, and they're like, hey, since we're already here in Portugal, we should kill everybody here. So they wreck a whole bunch of territory in Portugal and take some territory over there, which they end up almost immediately losing. But they load up with a lot of treasure and they're like, hey, check it. We've got all this loot and we can use this on the crusade. And we can sort of buy cool stuff along the way. We can come back with a lot of souvenirs. What about Frederick? What's going on with Frederick? Well, They set out in May 1189, and they're trudging. They're going the long way. They're going by foot. And there are so many political issues along the way. Frederick stops in Hungary, and they want him to fix their problems. He ends up stopping in Serbia, and they want him to fix all of their problems. He shows up to basically the middle part of the Balkan Peninsula, and then everybody just starts sending people like, hey, you've got a big army, and we're friends with you. You should totally fix all of our problems. And he's like, look, guys, I don't really want to do any of this. This is not why I'm here. I'm here to kill the bad guys. I'm just trying to march my army through. Yes, I need to be polite with you because we require food, and it would be great if you would feed us instead of us using our stores. But I don't care about your petty little, cousins that are trying to take over the throne from you. I'm just trying to get to the bad guys. Now, what's really weird here is that everybody knows that he's coming, right? I'm assuming the bride wasn't consulted. At that time period, the bride really didn't have very much of a say-so. Meanwhile, you could kill some guys for us. Could you just they're like right there. Like, we actually brought one of these guys here. Would you just be like, yes, kill that guy, and then we'll kill that guy? But anyway, all these people know that he's showing up. The Byzantines had been notified, we're showing up, right? But when Frederick's army shows up to Byzantine territory in the Balkans, it scares the bejesus out of them. They get freaked out because he's coming with a much bigger army than he said that he was. And he's got about 7,000 other Hungarians and Serbs and Slavs that he's sort of rounded up along the way. Like, hey guys, we're going Crusade, get on in, right? So he shows up with this much larger army than he's really supposed to have, and the Byzantine guards along the border don't want to let him in. And he's like, no, I'm coming in. I've got a letter. Your guy said that he's going to ferry me across. I'm totally coming in. And the Byzantine border lords are like, no, you can't come in because you lied to us about how many people that you have. You're scary. We don't like this. You should probably just go away. And Frederick was like, come on, guy. Do you really think I'm going away? And so the Byzantines freak out, and they end up having to exchange letters with each other because this is the only way that they feel kind of, okay about stuff. And Frederick ends up being too brusque, right? He just he offends the sensibilities of the Byzantines. And at this point, the Byzantines are going to start trying to renegotiate the deal, right? Like, we said you could come over here and we would ferry you across and we wouldn't ask you for anything, but now you've been a jerk. And now that you've been a jerk, you have to give us hostages. And the only way we're going to get your army over to Asia is if you leave your kids and hostages here with us in Byzantine world. And Frederick's like, dude, no, not going to happen. Not part of the deal. And so then the Byzantines are like, but yeah, you're totally going to do that. And so the response from Frederick here is very Barbarossa-ish. He decides, okay, cool, how about this? I'm going to take one of your cities, and I'm going to sit inside the walls of that city and eat all of your food and kill all of your animals to feed my army. And then when you get your little head around to agreeing to the original deal, then we can go to Asia. How about that? So he takes the city of Philippopolis, which is modern-day Plovdiv. And he sits inside the city and he starts eating all of their food. And he just about runs the entire region out of food, while the Byzantines are like, you can't do this, you can't do this. And he's like, I'm doing it. You're going to take me across to Asia? And they're like, we want hostages, we want hostages. And he's like, how about food? How about moving us to Asia? How about leaving us alone, right? What's up, Dr. Ivo Lazzi? How's it going, man? Good to see you. We just came here, months-long travel with a massive army on foot. You just want me to turn? Yeah, it was a very strongly worded letter, right? It uses, please refer to the last email. Per your last email is in there, right? How about you just give us what we want or we'll take it? Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. So eventually the Byzantines are like, look, if it's going to get him out, we should consider this. But other Byzantine groups are like, no, we really, really, really shouldn't do this. We really shouldn't do this. So some of the Byzantines actually start attacking the German troops. They're doing like skirmish stuff where they're running up to the edge of the army. They're shooting some arrows or harrying them along the border and then sort of running away and doing guerrilla kind of stuff. And in the midst of all of this, the Germans catch this big group of spies. And these spies were Armenian spies, and they basically give up the fact that the Byzantines were about to march an army out to fight Frederick. So Frederick lays a trap for him and counterattacks them and beats the crap out of the Byzantines. And then at that point, it's just like, hey, take us to Asia. And the Byzantines are like, man, F you, get in the boats. So this is how Frederick gets over into Turkey. Now, that's the land route. What's going on with our buddies that were supposed to meet up in Sicily? Well, the French and the English did manage to get to Sicily. And while they got to Sicily, it turns out that there are some really attractive women in Sicily. And Richard is kind of souring on the marrying Philip's sister thing because he'd kind of rather marry one of these women. So he breaks the engagement with Philip's sister and decides to marry somebody else. And Philip is like, man, this is exactly what I would expect from the English. You uncouth, barbarian, heathen people on the border of the world. What are you doing? You're not even following the rules that you said to the, to the Pope. And, Richard sort of like, hey man, I'm like a bit like half Norman. We don't really care very much about the church. We sort of just do what we can when we need to. So the French decide, you know what? We're just going to go on crusade. We're not waiting for you. We're just going to go on crusade. So they leave. And then Richard's like, okay, cool. Should we do like a marriage thing? Should we do the wedding? So yeah, they're going to do that. In the meantime, we need to take one of these cities. So the English actually end up taking the city of Messina on the island of Sicily because, they were already there. Why not take the city? So they loot it and, then the French are sailing off and what's going on. Well, the Byzantines really suffered from poor communication skills, didn't they? Yes, pretty much. They needed an HR department or like a better press secretary or something like that. Okay, so by this point, we have Crusaders moving over into a region where they might actually encounter Muslim people. And when the German army gets into Anatolia, they actually do really well. It's a very skilled army. Barbarossa's a rather intelligent commander. And right off the bat, they're going to break into Anatolia and they're going to retake the city of Iconium, which was a big city that had previously been one of the regional capitals of the area. And this was like a big deal. It really was a big boon for their side because now they have this like base of operations and they can use this to sort of feel out their next moves and stuff like that. And they decide to move a little bit further towards the Holy Land, and then something really jacked up happens. In 1190, they are moving out eastward towards the border of the territory that was at that time controlled by Muslim forces, and Frederick falls off of his horse. They're crossing a river, and his horse apparently stumbled on a rock or something in the river, and Frederick falls off the horse into the river and then doesn't come back up in time and drowns in the river. Now, he was an older guy, and he's, of course, wearing armor, so it's not like this is completely odd. But, yeah, this is a big deal for a lot of the Germans because they were following Frederick. They were following their king. He was, well, technically emperor, right? They really wanted to be on his side. They wanted to fight for him. He had already won them a battle and a couple of battles in a city and stuff like that. Was he a witch? You've heard that witches sink. He was not a witch. He was just wearing plate in a river that's fairly deep with a fairly stiff current. And when he fell off, everybody's like, oh, he'll stand up. And then he didn't. And then by the time that everybody started trying to look for him, he was dead. Now, they did fish his body out. And like the story of his body is almost worthy of a stream itself. It's really, really weird. His son, Frederick of Swabia, is with the army and decides like, okay, what we should do is we should basically skin my father and I should just carry his bones around with me. So they like take all of his skin and muscle and tissue off, and they have like a little ceremony there in Turkey for his like flesh. But then he's carrying the bones around with him because nothing says loving your dad like literally carrying around his bones with you. Odd stuff, right? Skulls for the skull throat, right? Didn't that happen to one of the Roman emperors, like in the same river? No, not that I know of. The place that Frederick Barbarossa died wasn't too far away from where Julian the Apostate died. He got killed by his own people. One of his own soldiers threw a spear and stabbed him in the back while he was on a horse. Trajan died not too far away from there. I can't remember of a Roman emperor drowning in a river. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I just can't remember it off the top of my head. You're welcome to Google that, though. Swimming in armor isn't the best idea. Correct. Attila the Hun died of a bloody nose. Well, he died of a brain bleed that probably burst a big blood vessel in his brain that caused him to bleed out of the nose. It probably wasn't just the nosebleed that killed him. It was the massive aneurysm or embolism that popped in his brain. Tan Mahide, Clyde. What up, Foggage? Good to see you, my friend. Wikipedia shows the tapestry recounting of his death. Yeah. I think that's just smart traveling. The bones are only the things that are not going to be rotting. That's a good point, Dragon. That's a good point. It's literally just a dead guy and a horse with little waves traced on top. That was Isildur. He had the ring betrayed him. And he got killed by orc arrows. And that was at the Battle of Gladden Fields, right? That's what stress does when you take... Yeah, exactly, right? He didn't technically drown in a river. He got shot by orcs and then fell in a river, right? Otherwise, we're just going to have Weekend at Freddy's and we're going to prop the Emperor up on a horse and somebody's going to come around and talk to the body every now and then. That would have been a funnier show, right? I would have watched that. Crusade with Freddy. Instead of Weekend at Bernie's. Anyway. What are the Germans to do? Their great leader is now dead. Well, his son tries to take over. And he's like, okay, Germans, I'm here. I'm his son. Everybody can fight for me. And a big old chunk of the army is just like, nope, we're good. We swore oaths to that guy, and now we're going back home. And a lot of the army goes back home. Trying to estimate exactly how many is hard to do. It was a substantial portion, though. And they just nope out and go right on back to Germany. Now, what are we to do then as the Germans? Well, you're in hostile territory. You're surrounded by bad guys, and you just lost half of your army-ish, right? Well, you've got to ask the Crusader states, like, hey, Crusader states, we're actually trying to come help you guys. Is there anything you could do for us? And they managed to make their way down to Antioch, which was still technically in the hands of Christians. Again, this is the Principality of Antioch. And they're like, okay, cool, now we can take a breather. When they get to Antioch, they think everything is great. We're going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. And then an epidemic breaks out in the army. And we don't know exactly what it was. It's just described as a fever. And this is not the fever that is solved by cowbell. This is the fever that kills a big chunk of the remaining part of your army. Well, what do you do then if you're the Crusaders and the Germans? The Principality of Antioch doesn't really want your army in its cities because of aforementioned epidemic. They don't really want you spreading that to everybody, so they'd be happy if you sort of just scooted your butt on down. So they send word to Guy. Again, this is the king of Jerusalem, and they're like, hey, what can we do? Where would we be best suited? And Guy says, look, if you can make it to Tyre, which was, again, one of the few holdout cities, if you get to Tyre, you can link up with some of my people that are coming in by sea, and you can get them to bring you to where I'm at Acre, because at this point, Guy, again, king of Jerusalem, is still laying siege to Antioch. I'm sorry, laying siege to Acre. And the siege at Acre ends up being a big old mess. It ends up being a siege inside of a siege. So the forces of Saladin had taken the city of Acre, and Guy's forces had shown up and laid siege to the city. But then Saladin's army had sort of grouped around them. So we have like Saladin's forces holding the city, and then Christians, and then more Muslims. And then here comes these other Christians. So then it's like siege within a siege within a siege within a siege. It's like nesting dolls of siege rings. At this point, there are not very many Germans left, but they had teamed up with some of the other forces from the Crusader states, some other soldiers from Europe that had not been aligned with one of the three big kings had managed to make their way over to Tyre. So there's going to be a substantial force of several thousands that's going to show up with the hope of relieving Guy's forces and getting them some much-needed aid. This is a big welcomed sigh of relief from Guy's forces. They see this Christian army. They're like, holy crap, this is going to be amazing. They've got Germans. They've got people from Europe. They've got supply lines. This is going to be amazing. This is what's going to turn the tide. We're going to retake Acre. Then we'll go retake Jerusalem. Things will be great. They show up, and Frederick immediately dies of malaria. And at that point, all of the Germans pretty much go, see ya. And that's sort of like, well, crap. How did they get home without the Byzantine boats? Oh, the Byzantines shuffled them back across because they didn't want anything to do with the Germans. So many leader deaths. Yeah, that's kind of what happens in the ancient world. People show up and you love them and then they die. Anyway, so what's going on with the British and the French? Because they're still not even over here yet, right? Well, about the time that Frederick of Swabia dies, the French show up. And Philip is like, hey, look, we're here to help. And Guy is like, are you going to die? I mean, the last dude showed up that, and he was going to help, and then he died like almost immediately. Are you going to die? And Philip's like, no, dude, I'm here. Like, I made a deal with the Pope. I swore honor to God, and I'm going to do my thing. So what we need to do is we need to start building some siege weapons. We're going to take that junk. We're going to take this city. And Guy is like, yes. And so here's the French army, and they're helping out the Christians, and they run off a lot of Saladin's army. So they're going to attack the city directly, and this is great. Now, where are the English? The English didn't leave immediately because they had to have a wedding and take a city on Syracuse, or a city on Sicily. So they were leaving later than the French, and they left Sicily and ran square into a big storm. And they ended up getting pushed off course, and they had to land on Cyprus. And when they got to Cyprus, the nobility on Cyprus was very much rude to them. So they were like, you know what we should do? We should just take Cyprus. So then they had to conquer Cyprus. This, by the way, how England ends up with a claim to Cyprus. So at this point, they had taken land in Portugal because they were right there. And then they had taken land in Sicily because, they were like right there. And then they'd taken Cyprus because, they're like right there, right? So when they finally show up, Richard has this giant chunk of loot. Are they going to take that city for rock and roll? Maybe. Maybe so. I promise I will never die. Yeah, exactly. I guess it wasn't the best of luck having the name Frederick. Yeah, didn't go over so well for anybody named Frederick. So Richard shows up and finds Guy and Philip getting ready to take Acre. And Richard is like, heck yeah, man, I'm here and I'm ready to lead. And Philip is like, you're not leading the army. And Richard's like, dude, I'm totally leading the army because I'm Richard. You're not the one that just beat up the Portuguese and the Sicilians and the Cypriots. I am. I'm a boss. I'm running the army. And Philip is like, no, you're going to shut up because I'm already here. I'm working with the king of Jerusalem, and we're going to work in conjunction to take back Acre, and then we're going to go relieve Jerusalem. And Richard's like, okay, cool, but I'm in charge. Right, I'm operations manager of this mission. Right, this is like Archer season 11. I don't know if anybody's seen Archer, but that's the one where he wakes up from the coma and like Cyril is actually decent, but they argue about who's in control of the mission all the time. Anyway, watch TV. I watched way too much TV. All of this is happening while the sheriff of Nottingham is overtaxing the people. This is correct. This is accurate. Yep. Anyway. Philip and Richard do not see eye to eye. And this is probably because Richard snuffed his sister, or snubbed rather, not snuffed. He didn't kill her. Snubbed the sister and then managed to take a whole bunch of land and had a whole bunch of money that he was using to pay for a whole bunch of stuff. So when Acre ends up falling, which it does fall in August of 1191. Dun dun dun. Dun 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 dun. View Art, thank you so much for the follow, and welcome to the adventure. Oh yeah, Pam is amazing. She's probably my favorite character too. I think the best season of Archer is Archer Vice, and one of the best reasons it's the best season, it's because Pam's overwhelming addiction to cocaine. I know it's not funny to necessarily laugh about cocaine addiction, but this is a fantasy world in a cartoon, so I think it's okay, right? Oh, crap, spoiler, sorry. I'll shut up then. Enthusiast about everything, both clumsy and naive, but yeah, also with the giant tattoo of Lord Byron on her back. Freaking love Pam. He didn't find his French wife very attractive. We didn't actually marry her yet. He dumped her before they actually got married. He broke off the engagement and then married somebody else. Anyway, so they take Acre and they're like, yay, we took a city. And Guy is like, okay, cool, here's what we need to do. And Philip is like, hey, great, that sounds amazing and everything, but I'm in charge. And then Richard's like, dudes, I'm in charge, totally in charge. And they can't figure out who's in charge, right? We've got 3 kings. None of them necessarily want to bend the knee to the other one. And so what ends up happening is Philip goes, you know what? Forget you guys. I'm going back to Europe. And Richard's like, well, wait, hey. What are you going to do back in Europe? And Philip is like, nothing. And Richard's like, wait. Are you going to go back to France and take all of the British or all of the English territory that's on the continental part of the mainland? And Philip is like, well, I'm not going to not do that. Also, I'm totally going to go do that. And Richard's like, but you swore to the Pope that you wouldn't do that. And France, and then Philip is like, well, you swore to the Pope that you're going to marry my sister. Anyway, Philip ends up going back to France, immediately starts taking English land in the continent. And that's going to come back up, in the future as a reason. Philip, of course, abandoned the Crusade, and he turned his back on God, and then went back to Europe to fight against Christians instead of fighting against the bad guy. This is used as propaganda for a long time against the French. This is actually one of the biggest reasons why the Fourth Crusade has to happen. The French try to make up for Philip's goof right here, right? Richard be like, but have you seen the women of Sicily? Right? They're pretty. Anyway, so now we've got Richard and Guy. And Guy's like, all right, dude, look, I'm going to be for real. I've got some other stuff that I need to handle. What are you going to do? And Richard's like, I'm totally going to go retake Jerusalem because that's what I'm here for. And we're going to reestablish your kingdom, and then you're going to swear fealty to me because I would give you your kingdom back, and then we're going to be friends. And Guy is like, you know my name isn't pronounced Guy, right? Guy of Lusignan. That's... sounds pretty French. And then, Richard's like, oh, cool, dude, I have land in France too. It's all good. I've got plenty of people that are French that are my subjects. And you can just be another one of them. And then Guy's like, I don't really like this at all. But if it gets me my territory back, I can deal with it until he goes away. He'll go away eventually. He's very, obsessive compulsive about some stuff, but also has really flighty tendencies. So we're going to be okay. I'm going to go do my thing and let him take back the city of Jerusalem. Go do it. Go do it, buddy. Go do it. So now we have Richard versus Saladin. We're actually going to have some big battles here. Richard decides, well, here's the deal. If we're going to pretty much be doing this by ourselves now, we can't leave a lot of people in Acre because we don't need to leave a big chunk of our people holding this city. We need to be able to move with our people. So what we should do is... we should kill all the people in Acre that aren't Christian. Now, that's a bit much. And we're talking about thousands of people here, men and women and children and old people. This does not go over well. There are even a lot of Christians that are involved in the situation that are like, dude, Richard, for real? And he's like, we can't leave our soldiers here. We can't leave a quarter of our army to hold this city. We need to be able to move with our entire force because we don't have a lot as it is. And they end up killing a whole bunch of people. It's thousands of people. And when Saladin finds out about this, oh boy, does it light a fire under his butt. This is big bad stuff, right? This crusade has Benny Hill for its soundtrack pretty much. Have you seen the Habsburg women? I don't know if there are Habsburgs around at this point. That's a great question. I know there's Hohenstaufens. I don't know when the first Habsburg actually shows up in a land-holding capacity. That's a great question that I don't know. I should probably know the first official Habsburg, but I don't know who it was. Who orchestrated this whole mess? Henry Kissinger? Well, he would have sold guns to the Crusaders that would have then killed all of the innocent people. If that's what Kissinger had done to be involved. He would have sold guns to the English, and then the English would have killed all of the Muslim people in Acre. So, that sounds very Kissinger-ish. That sounds like Kissinger in Indonesia. That also sounds like Kissinger in Africa. And Kissinger in Bangladesh. And we actually did, Love Cuppers, I don't know if you were here when it happened. We did a viewer request on Henry Kissinger 2 viewer requests ago and talked about some of that stuff. So, I don't know if that's why it was fresh on your mind. But anyway, so... in order to move on Jerusalem, the Crusaders needed to take a city a little bit closer. So we're down right about here at this point in Tyre, and then Acre's a little bit further south, and there's a city called Arsuf. And if you're going to attack Jerusalem, you really need to hold Arsuf because it's on part of the approach to the city. And you really don't want to try to take Jerusalem and leave this city in the hands of the enemies, basically at your rear guard, right in a prime position to attack you. So the Crusaders are going to have to try to take the city. And Saladin knows this. Saladin is a very intelligent military leader, and he knows that the Crusaders are going to try to take Arsuf on their approach to Jerusalem. So Saladin actually plans a surprise attack to sort of catch Richard's army on the way to Arsuf and Arsuf is, I don't know, man. It's just sort of like this moment where Richard sort of makes it clear that he's a player in the game, because he kind of recognized the style that Saladin was going to fight in and puts together some information and ends up getting counterattacked, but immediately manages to reconfigure his soldiers in such a way to try to negate the benefits of Saladin's forces. Saladin's army was overwhelmingly light cavalry, and they had this tactic where they like to ride big circles around you and shoot at you with bows. And their bows were particularly good because they were composite bows that could shoot really, really far. So longer than the range of the English bows. So they would literally just ride around you, and you couldn't catch them because they're on horseback, and they would just shoot you to death. So Richard uses territory and terrain and sort of backs up his troops to stuff that sort of breaks up their ability to do that, and actually manages to foil the surprise attack. And in doing so, Saladin's forces end up getting run off, and Richard manages to take Arsuf. And this is like a big, kind of like scary moment for Saladin, because he's like, dude, we really can't, we can't lose any more territory. The next city in the line that you would sort of want to take is a city called Jaffa. Let me catch up. You were here, you requested the Opium Wars that night. Excellent. And you won that one, so there we go. I took a class in high school where the teacher was excited to revision. I tenuously trace his ancestry to the Habsburgs. Cool. One of your classmates didn't think too much of this and managed to trace his own ancestry more directly. Aww. You're a third cousin. I'm from the main line. I don't want to derail the stream, and we could talk about this later too, but do you think the conflict between the Turks and the Kurds started with Saladin or later in the Ottoman era? Evo, that's a great question. And there are definitely roots of that started during this period of time. So again, Saladin was a Kurdish leader of the Ayyubids, who were a group that had taken over Egypt from the Fatimids. And the theoretical leaders of the Muslim world at that time was the Seljuks. And the Seljuks were Turkish. Now, the Caliph was still Abbasid and was Arabic, but the Caliph at that point was a very, very minor figure. The leader was the leader of the Seljuks. Now, theoretically speaking, the Zingids under like people like Nur ad-Din and the Ayyubids were supposed to be under the Seljuks. So you have the Abbasid Caliph, who's mostly just a figurehead. Then you have the Seljuks, who are actually sort of in charge of things, and these other groups are supposed to line up behind them. But Saladin he's a big old scary guy, and he had taken over just tons of territory and taken stuff from the Seljuks and done stuff that's rather humiliating to them. Now, it's fair to point out that ethnic differences aren't always easily traced to single events. Sometimes we can, right? We can go like, this is the point where these groups of people just really started hating each other. But a lot of this also came from the fact that when the Seljuks initially converted and moved into the region over here, right, where the Kurdish people would have lived naturally or originally during that time, the Seljuks were under a lot of the fervor of the convert, right? If you are recently converted to a religion, the tendency is that you're going to be really, really, really fired up about that religion. And the Kurdish people had been a mix of different religions. Some of them were Muslim. There were even some Kurdish Christians. There were, kind of scattered out in this region. But here come the Seljuks, and they're just like, dude, you got to get on board with the Islam. And if not, we're going to make it very, very hard on you. So that probably added to some of it. The fact that they wouldn't line up behind them and had a little bit of an independent streak that the Turks didn't like. is definitely part of it. But those two things absolutely carried over into the Ottoman period, and the Ottomans were almost what we might call xenophobic. If you weren't Ottoman Turk, you were the bad guy. And that's where a lot of the specific directed military activity against the Turks begins, and stuff like forced conversion of people in that area to Islam starts. It's a very, very long history. I wouldn't necessarily say that the stuff that's happening around this time was pivotal. Like, if, hypothetically speaking, if Salah had been a Seljuk, I don't think that would have eliminated Ottoman hatred of Kurdish people. I think it may have lessened it a little bit. It might have delayed some of the action, but I don't think that would have a dramatic effect on it, if that makes any sense, right? Because we can look at what the Ottomans did to other people groups that they didn't have any contact with, and in many cases it's the same way that they treated the Kurds, right? So partially yes, but ultimately not really, if that answers your question. This has been your belief too. Ottoman comes very aggressive towards Kurdish people, which is a different attitude compared. Yeah. That's very true. Right. I agree with that. The Kurdish situation is one that is really unfortunate. The Kurdish people historically have wanted most of the time to just be left alone. But because of their location historically, that's not going to be something that is easy for empires to do. The Kurdish diaspora, the region with Kurdish people, is sort of like right here, right? So this is, if we put on modern borders, this is like the northern part of Iraq, this part of Iran, northern part of Syria, and a large portion of this region of Turkey over here, right? So they sit at the confluence of different regions. This is where Europeans come through and Asians come through and Africans come up, right? That area is just the crossroads of everybody wants to fight right here. And unfortunately for the Kurdish people, they don't really get left alone by anybody. Now, it's to be fair, they've fought back. They have done a lot of stuff that I would classify as terrorist attack. They've done bombings against civilians and stuff like that. I'm not going to condone any of it. I think that if you're targeting innocent people, you're bad and you shouldn't do that. But if we're looking historically, the logic that they're using is one that is not... How do I say this the right way? If a Kurdish person today was going to bomb somebody in Turkey, I would not agree with that, and I would tell them, no, do not do that. But if they said, I'm doing this because of all of these things, I would look at them and say, I understand why you're doing this. I still don't want you to do it, right? If that makes any sense whatsoever. Their motivation is one that is understandable, but I'm not going to get behind targeting innocent people. I think that's bad. You shouldn't do that. I'm anti-murder. I'm very, very anti-murder. Sure. No. Don't ever apologize for a tangent. That's the good stuff. I love answering questions like that. And I think that it's way better for me to talk about stuff that I know for a fact you want to know about than it is for me to sort of just run my mouth about stuff that you might be interested in, if that makes any sense, right? If I'm going to talk, I would rather directly answer questions than sort of just hope that what I'm saying is interesting. I think what I'm saying is interesting, but it just popped up in chat, right? Tangents are welcome, right? You want to eat something, but you also don't want to miss anything. Zero, I do save all of my VODs. So if you like what you're hearing right here, I've got about 200 VODs of stuff going all the way back to the beginning of human history. You can find them on my videos page. So after we get done with this stream, it'll be a VOD, and you can go watch it later on. I appreciate you hanging out, but I understand that 3 a.m. is early as crap, so do your thing. But it's nice to meet you, and I hope that we get to see you again. So, chat absolutely thrives on tangents. I agree, Evo. I would be 100% behind a Kurdistan. And I was very hopeful when the Kurdish province in northern Iraq was given a lot of autonomous governing power. I was really, 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 really hopeful that that would be an overwhelmingly positive experiment, and that other regions would follow suit. But then Syria fell apart, Turkey got involved, Turkey started directly killing Kurdish people again. Erdogan feels weak and is pretty much... I mean, he's taken over a big chunk of northern Syria. It just happens to be where a lot of Kurdish people live. I don't know, man. I would be completely behind an independent Kurdistan. It would be a difficult thing to manage during the creation, but I think if it ever got created, it would be an incredibly peaceful country in that region, and I think it would honestly bring a lot of stability to that region as well. If you could basically just make a country that was that circle, right, that I showed. Now, that would involve a lot of hardship because not everybody that lives in that area is Kurdish, right? And what would those people do? We would need to make sure that those people would have freedom of choice. We would want to make sure that those people weren't considered to be second-class citizens. We would want to give them full voting power. We would want to make sure that they weren't removed from their land. They weren't fired from jobs or anything like that. We would want to make sure that everybody was treated fairly. I don't think it would be an easy thing to do. I think it'd be a very, 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 very difficult thing to do. But sometimes good things are difficult to do. Right? But that's just me. Had to sneeze. I think ethics get incredibly weird for a person when none of their choices can improve their situation. I think ethics get incredibly weird. That's a great statement, Frank. When they can't see any way out, and then a whole people are held in poverty, and when a whole people are held in poverty, terrorism is just what's going to happen. Whether or not it's terrorism is ethical from the God's eye perspective. Yeah, man, that's... Frank, that's heavy. And I think that's true. And I'm, again, not condoning terrorism, not condoning targeting innocent people, not condoning destroying property that's not yours. But it's something that I understand even if I don't condone it. And I think that's about as far as I can go with it, right? Same goes for Armenia, Azerbaijan, Turkey. Yeah, exactly. Who is this we that is making sure of stuff? Theoretically, we would be the rest of the world. The good faith acting countries in the world. I don't think that should be run completely by the U.S., if that's what you're asking, Foggage. I think that the U.S.'s attempt at nation building have all been catastrophically horrible, and we should never try to do that unilaterally again. On that note, crime in the U.S. is correlated with poverty, 100%. It's also correlated with education, right? So, anyway, getting back to the topic at hand, Jaffa. Are we going to take Jaffa? We've got to. So we've got to hold Jaffa. Well, we lose it. Saladin goes and takes Jaffa because he's lost Arsuf. He's going to go take Jaffa. So the Crusaders then have to go back and take Jaffa. And then Saladin's like, well, I'm going to retake Jaffa, but he can't. So now, like, basically what's happening is that Richard's sitting with his army and he can literally see Jerusalem. Like, he's on a position where he can see the walls of the city. But his men are tired. He's running out of supplies, and he's outpositioned because Jerusalem is big. It has big old walls, and Salah-ad-Din still got soldiers running around outside those walls. So, what are we to do if we are Richard? You know you're beaten. You've got a good position. If Salah-ad-Din wants to take out your force, it's going to be a rough fight for him, and he's going to lose a lot of men. Perhaps so many men that he would then lose control of all of his other territory. You're still going to lose, but you're going to take a big old chunk out of it with him, right? It's going to be two heavyweights standing in the middle of the ring and just slugging each other to death. And you're going to get beaten, right? You're going to get beaten. So Richard says, we need to ask for terms of peace. And while we have this position where we can negotiate from a position of any strength, we need to go ahead and try to negotiate. And so this is where we get the Treaty of Jaffa. So Salah-ad-Din and Richard sit down and talk it out. Salah-ad-Din is not pleased with Richard. After the massacre at Acre, and after proving to be a very capable foe, there's a bit of begrudging respect, but ultimately Salah-ad-Din doesn't like this guy. If you've ever played Assassin's Creed, they weren't friends. They got that real wrong in Assassin's Creed. It was more like, okay, I get you, I see you, I hate you, but I see you. So we're going to make a treaty. Salah-ad-Din gets to keep everything that he's taken. And this is a big chunk of Crusader territory, including Jerusalem. And all of the territory that the Kingdom of Jerusalem had over here is now going to be in the hands of Salah-ad-Din. Now, this is a big deal because there were a lot of places in that region that Richard would have loved to hold. And this is where we get to put on the adventure hat, because I've been to a lot of these places and I can show you pictures of these. So if you're new to the channel and you don't know anything about it, this is the adventure hat. Because I'm pasty and I burn really easily, when I decide to show pictures of things that I've been to or seen, I get to wear the adventure hat. This is Karak Castle. And Karak Castle was part of the Kingdom of Jerusalem for a little while. This is in modern-day Jordan. It was a big old castle that held out for a long time against Salah-ad-Din, but he ended up taking it. Ed Venture. Yes, exactly. What up, David? This is a big old castle. Very fortified with these huge walls. This, by the way, is a natural hill that they then further steepified. What's the correct word for making something steeper? I don't know. But this is a big old castle, and it held out a long time against Salah-ad-Din, but he gets to keep it. And Richard would have been graded. Thank you, Nixolotl. That is correct. Richard would have loved to take this back. I like ensteepened. Had the inclination. Oh, that's a good, because it's got a double pun in it, right? There's also this castle, which... Oh, I get inclination. I get it. This is a place called Wuaria. And the castle here is actually in pretty bad shape. Stupified because it has the word up in it. Okay, I get you. The castle used to sit on top of this hill. And you can see all of the bricks that were part of it. Now, what's interesting is it looks like you could walk right out to this castle, but you can't, because this area is... It does look like Tatooine. This is in Jordan, in the deserts of Jordan. When you try to get to that castle, you go past a lot of these. These are what are called wadis, and it's a place where water has, washed away stuff. But to get to this castle, you have to cross a bunch of these, and it's almost maze-like, trying to maneuver your way around. And you can see that in some of the places, the Crusaders had actually built bridges and cut some of these rocks loose so that if they needed to, they could knock this down and fortify themselves on top of this natural hill, which is rather ingenious. Here's a picture of the gatehouse, and you can see there's a goober here in the picture for scale. That's actually me. There I am. But to get to this, you had to go through this twisty, windy, mazy pathway thing, and then through this natural arch that they had turned into a gatehouse. That is the wrong hat. This is actually before I had the adventure hat. So this is like the original version of the adventure hat, which was just a baseball cap. I recognized that I needed the adventure cap or adventure hat after this trip because the tops of my ears got sunburned like mad. Anyway, Wuaria falls to Saladin. This castle, this is Montreal Castle. The modern name for it in Arabic is Shobak. Big ol' honkin' castle up on top of this natural hill. Also, these big imposing walls. Now you can actually see here where after Saladin's forces take it, they replace a lot of the decoration with Arabic stuff. But just big, massive walls. Saladin gets to hold that too. Montreal is actually fascinating. It has this big fortification on top of these big hills, and it's situated right around this spring. Anyway, it's one of the last big castles of the Crusaders that holds out against Saladin's forces. But in the Treaty of Jaffa, Richard gives up all of these castles. Now, what's interesting here is he doesn't really have a lot of say-so to give this stuff up. It's not really his in the first place. This is technically owned by the Kingdom of Jerusalem. But basically, he's agreeing to these terms by all Christians. And he's just going to say, like, look, Europeans agree that you can have all this territory. And Saladin's like, cool, I love fortified positions. By the way, I have way more pictures on all of those locations. If you want to see one in particular, you know how to get those. Or maybe you don't, I don't know. But there's a redemption if you want to see more. But anyway, so Saladin gets to keep Jerusalem, all these big castles, all the stuff. The Crusaders, though, get to hold what they have, which is not really that much. So what does Richard get out of this? Well, he gets out with his life. And Saladin agrees to let all of the Christians in the area leave if they want to without killing them. And Saladin also agrees to allowing Christian pilgrims. But pilgrims is the key term here, right? You got to be very careful. You can't bring weapons. You can't show up with an army. You have to be unarmed, and you have to kind of sign up for pilgrimage tokens and stuff like that. You obviously you can't show up with an invading force and call this a pilgrimage armed version, right? So this ends the Third Crusade. And was it a win for Christians? No. They ended up with less territory than they had before. But this is my holy sword. Right, exactly. Was it a win for Saladin? Yes, but it was a qualified win because he came out on top. He got the Europeans and the Christians to agree that this was his territory. But he got a bloody nose. Let's be real clear. He lost a lot of soldiers. He lost a lot of station because prior to that, he was basically seen as invincible. Now, he won. No joke. There is no denial that Saladin won, right? But he proved vulnerable. And that sometimes is enough for other people to start coming after you. But the Christians in Europe don't get what they want, and the Crusader states are pretty much going to end up dead not too long after this. not too long after this. And that's going to be the end of them for a little while. And it takes another 6 or so years for another Crusade to get whipped up. And that one ends so badly. So badly. Does this tree have anything to do with Java cakes? I don't know. I don't actually know what a Java cake is. I know what a lava cake is, but I don't know what a Java cake is. So, anyway, that's the Third Crusade. I hope that it was entertaining. Richard, of course, goes back, and he is Good King Richard, the Lionheart that came back on Crusade, and da-da-da-da-da. I can't say that I even know what a Jaffa cake is. I'm going to have to Google that. I mean, it might be where it comes from. Jaffa cakes. Interesting. Let's go to the web here. This is a Jaffa cake. Yeah. No, what's going on here? Stop. Wow. There we. Nope. No. Jaffa cake. Okay. I've never had these before. They are a cake introduced by McVitie and Price in the UK in 1927 and named after Jaffa oranges. They are the most common form of Jaffa cake, or circular, about 2 and so da-da-da-da-da. A Genoese sponge base. Let's just go to Wikipedia and we'll look up Jaffa cake. What is a Jaffa orange? I guess that's where we need to go next. Jaffa oranges. Also known as Shamuti orange, is an orange variety with few seeds and a tough skin that makes it particularly suitable for export. Developed by farmers in the mid-19th century, the variety takes its name from the city of Jaffa. Yep, there we go. Where it was first produced for export. So the answer is yes. And we learned something today. It's British. I just know that fat kids are made fun of in England for eating them. Oh, okay. These are great depending on the flavor. Yeah, so I guess I'm going to have to try to find some of these now because I've never had any before. I mean, I'd literally never even heard of them before. Sea Cucumber, what's up? You come on here and hear your cake, and your birthday's in 2.5 hours? Well, happy early birthday, my friend. Happy early birthday. And congratulations on surviving another lap around the sun. This is no small feat. Many people did not complete that lap this year. You are one of the ones that did. So congratulations. Happy birthday. It's good to see. All right. So yeah, that is all that I had planned. But as always, if you all have any questions about the Third Crusade or about anything else, you are welcome to ask. If there are point redemptions that you want to redeem, now would be a good time to do so. I do have something to unveil. You all might remember, if you are a regular or if you are in the Discord. If you're not in the Discord, if you want to join the Discord, there you go. We had an idea, or I guess technically the idea came from Cave Geek, who said that what I needed to do, because I have hats. I have the adventure hat, which I just wore. I have this guy, which is the opinion hat, because it makes me look super opinionated, right? It looks like the guy that you argue with at the coffee shop. So this is the opinion hat, right? And Matt just hit it. We have now the future hat. So here's the official unveiling of the future hat. Yeah, you get it? You get it? The future hat? Yeah. So this is the future hat. And if you want to summon the future hat, you can get me to predict something, but you have to tell me what it is. So Matt, what do you want me to predict? You have to give me something specific, like what's going to happen with this. This, by the way, is, of course, in reference to Marty McFly's hat from Back to the Future, where he goes to the future and gets the, the hoverboard and the book of sports almanac stuff, but this is the hat that he wears. This came from viewers like you. So you all supported the channel, and I got to get a cool hat, and now we have a cool new redemption. So Matt, what should I predict? Let's see. And Tuna wants to talk about Imran Khan. So let me do that while Matt is coming up with something that I should predict. Okay, so Imran Khan, previous political leader in Pakistan. Prior to that, cricket sports all-star, just got sentenced to 10 years in prison because the current government is scared that Imran Khan would run for president again. And they want to keep him out of politics as Imran. So his name is Imran Khan. And this has nothing to do with the Third Crusade anymore. This is just what's in the news. So he had been under threat of arrest about middle part of last year. And because he was so popular both prior to being president and even while he was president and after he was being president, his supporters literally blocked the Pakistani government and police from arresting Imran Khan. Now, eventually he did sort of surrender peaceably to the police and then was brought up on a whole bunch of charges of corruption and government interfering and basically everything that you try to charge somebody that's, basically you're trying to keep them out of politics and you're trying to charge them with something so that you can put them in jail. And so he's been on trial and he just got sentenced, I think either today or yesterday, which was today in Pakistan because they're many hours ahead of us, to 10 years in prison. And this is by no means completely coincidental to the fact that Pakistan is about to hold another election. It's very clear that the ruling party in Pakistan is trying to keep Imran Khan out of any position, and it's very clear that they're scared that he might even still run, even from jail. So that's going to be a developing situation. Keep your eyeball on that one if you're interested in Pakistani politics. So Matt says he has no idea what I should predict. No, nothing to do with the Enron scandal at all. Predict, will there ever be another Back to the Future movie? They'll eventually remake it. But that's not really what we want to do with the Future Hat. So let me tell you what the Future Hat is and why I'm wearing it and what hopefully we can get out of this. The idea originally, and again, this came from Cave Geek, and the original idea was that I was going to get a Gandalf hat. And so if you all know anything about me, you'll know that I'm a really big Lord of the Rings fan, Tolkien fanatic, etc. Gandalf does not have the ability to necessarily predict the future. But Gandalf is really friggin' old and has a lot of knowledge. And because of that, he has a very deep understanding and he's very wise. So he can somewhat predict the future based on the past. And I thought that was a really cool idea for the stream because, I'm not claiming that I'm some sort of the wise, right? I'm not one of the wise, and I'm definitely not a wizard. But the idea was, because I know a lot about the past and what's going on in the world, could I predict what's happening next? We shouldn't be able to summon the Future Hat twice. I thought I had that turned to where you could only do it once. If it has been summoned twice, I'm going to need to fix that. And I don't know why my mouse is suddenly going crazy. Yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah. How does it work? I'm not very good at doing this stuff on my own chat. Can I do this on my own chat? Am I able to mod myself? Did I take it back? No. I don't see it in the chat room, though. Let me go over here to mod view. Because I want to redeem... Oh, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. If Nixolotl actually has a request, I will honor Nixolotl's one, and I will refund Matt's, if that makes any sense. So let me go to activity feed, and I will... Can I know that there is something somewhere. Rewards request queue. Aha. Okay, done that one, done that one, done that one. This is 2 months old. Man, my mods are slipping on stuff. I guess nobody else really does this except for me. I think I go in and clean stuff out. Give me just a second, everybody. I know this is the fun part of the stream where Shane goes in and handles sort of small, teensy-weensy little things that are in the queue so that he doesn't look like a dum-dum. Let me just redeem or fix Matt's, and then we'll answer the question. Okay, so the question here is, you wanted to know what I think is going to happen about the border situation in Texas. That's a good one. And now Matt has actually got a question, so I guess I'll do both of them, and we'll just break it in with a twofer when it's not. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so what's going to happen with the border situation in Texas? I think what is likely to happen is Greg Abbott is going to continue to put down razor wire. The federal government is going to continue to remove razor wire. Eventually, the actual court case that is going to make its way through the court system is going to end up siding with the federal government. I don't think that Greg Abbott has the right as a governor to block the federal border agents from the border. And I think that the courts are going to say that the federal government has a constitutional decision and power to protect the border, and that if a state under its own capacity blocks federal border agents from accessing the border, the state is in violation of the Constitution. So I don't think that the Texas government is going to have a leg to stand on, and I think ultimately what's going to end up happening is when the lawsuit finally plays out, the judges in question, which might even be the Supreme Court, are going to say the federal government has the ability to remove razor wire from the border if it so desires. And I don't think that Greg Abbott is going to get a ruling that says that they can, nor do I think that the federal government is going to get a ruling that says that they can't. Because I think this is a hotly contested issue, and the courts aren't going to want to decide this. I think they're going to pass the narrowest possible judgment on this. The judgment was that the agents can remove it, not that Texas can't replace it. That is correct, Tuna. That's already the way that it is. And I think that is going to be... Well, okay, so to be clear here, that wasn't the actual verdict of the case. So here's what happened with the border case. Texas starts putting down razor wire to block the border. Technically, it's concertina wire, but whatever, who cares? The federal government then sends border agents in to protect the border and to apprehend individuals crossing the border. And in several instances, the federal government border agents have cut the razor wire, moved the razor wire, or completely removed the razor wire. So the federal government got sued by Texas. Texas said that the federal government was destroying its property and that they had no right to destroy Texas state property by destroying the razor wire or removing it. And they sued in the Western District of Texas. And at that point, the Attorney General of Texas asked the court to issue an injunction against the federal government pre-verdict. So basically, this decision is about to get decided by the courts. Before we decide this, we need them to stop because we don't know if they can do that yet. And the judge turned down their injunction. They said, no, the court doesn't have the power to tell the federal government to stop moving and cutting the razor wire. At that point, Texas asked the Supreme Court to decide on this injunction. And the Supreme Court said what the Western District of Texas decided was correct. The Supreme Court didn't issue a command or didn't give any elaboration. It just said what the Western District said is right. So the verdict is not yet in. There is still an active trial that is going to ultimately decide the situation. The only thing that has happened right now is there has been a request for an injunction against the federal government, and the court system has not granted Texas the injunction against the federal government. None of this is completely decided yet. It's still ongoing. It's still got court cases. It might take a year and a half, 2 years to get through all of this, right? So that's what's going on with that. But I think ultimately the final court of decision is going to say the federal government can remove razor wire. And I think that's going to be the narrowest possible decision. It's not going to say, and Texas doesn't, and Texas has the right, or and Texas doesn't have the right. And it's just going to say the federal government can remove it. I think that's what it's going to say. And it might be the Supreme Court, or it might be the Fifth Court of Appeals, or it might be the Federal Appeals Court, and it might be the Supreme Court. I don't know, but I think the decision is going to be the federal government can remove that in a very, very narrowly defined situation. This is a high school level civics class, and it was still a 5-4 of the Supreme Court. Yeah, I know, but the Supreme Court is heavily politicized, and I don't think anybody is surprised by that. And also, heads up, the Supreme Court has always been politicized. Shocker. People are like, well, back in the so-and-so days, the Supreme Court was so politicized. You're trying to tell me that separate but equal wasn't politicized? For real. The Dred Scott decision wasn't politicized? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, let me roll back up here and catch up. Dog hair. That's why your mouse keeps working. I think it's... I've got some like dried super glue on the desktop here, and I think it was just messing up. Predict one of the prompts for this week's Discovering Dragons. I couldn't even tell you, David. I'm trying to think of all the ones that have existed and ones that haven't existed. I'm going to go with sand. I don't think you've done anything with sand yet. And I think sand would be cool to have a dragon. Like a sand dragon. So I'm going to guess sand. So there we go. Okay. Predict what will happen in the next Russian election. Everybody running against Putin will die or end up in jail. That's not very much of a prediction, though. The future of the Houthi rebel situation. That's a great... Okay, so what's going to happen with the Houthi? America and Britain are eventually going to get tired of the Houthi. I'm predicting that what they're doing right now is actually just letting the Houthi shoot all of their high-tech missiles. Right? So the Houthi don't have an unlimited supply of war material. And I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to wait till they shoot all of their good missiles. And then when they get into like unguided missiles and like lobbing missiles and stuff like that, they're going to go in and take out those emplacements. Let's be very clear here. The United States and the UK know exactly where the Houthi are. They know exactly where they're launching the missiles from, and they know exactly where their leadership is. None of the ships right now are in very much actual danger as long as the United States forces are sitting right there shooting down literally everything. There's been an uptick in insurance cost to sail through that part of the Red Sea, which is logical, but it's also price gouging by the insurance companies who are going to take any excuse that they can. The actual threat from the Houthis is incredibly minimal. One of the things that America is hoping right now is that the Houthi will start asking Iran for more war material, and Iran will not be able to send Russia as much war material. Because let's be very clear here, Iran's biggest military partner right now is Russia, and anything that they can do to bleed off some of the material that might end up in Russian hands is a positive for America. So they're kind of playing with the Houthi right now, and I think they're going to let them shoot all of their good stuff out, and then when they're kind of like done shooting the good stuff, they'll go in and target the stuff where they've been shooting, and the Houthi will end up getting defanged pretty severely. I don't think they're going to push them out of Sana'a anyway, because I think that America secretly likes the fact that the Houthi are causing trouble for the Saudis, because ultimately we play nice with the Saudis, but we really don't like the Saudis very much. So that's what's probably going to happen with the Houthi. Under quick actions, you can change it. We got it. What up, Uncle Bill? How's it going? I know I'm so far behind in chat, by the way, everybody. I apologize. I've been running my mouth, and I'm way, way, way behind in chat. But anyway, that's the future hat. I hope you liked it. I hope it was everything that you wanted out of it. So there we go. Now we've got 3 hats. I need another emote for the future hat, but I don't know what it should be. I thought for a little while that I should use actual Michael J. Fox wearing the hat, but I thought that might actually be something that Twitch wouldn't go with because I don't own his likeness or something like that. I thought that the Supreme Court already made a judgment. That was about the injunction. You had 5-4. So the deeper, more serious question is, will Abbott and other states listen to that ruling if it's against them? Again, I don't think that it's going to be against them. I think it's just going to say the federal government can remove it. And then they're going to keep putting it down all day long and griping about it, but the federal government's going to be able to remove it. They prefer judges who don't know his civics. Yeah. Defiance of the U.S. government, and if so, what happens when they escalate things? Blowing stuff up. View art is in the chat. What's the best order to read Tolkien's books, Middle-earth books? If you've never read any of them, start with The Hobbit. It'll get you in the door. So Hobbit and then Lord of the Rings. And then if you're really brave, you can read parts of the Silmarillion. Specifically, I would say read Children of Hurin, which is part of the Silmarillion, but it's pulled out and turned into a big narrative form, right? So it's easier to handle. If you like Children of Hurin a lot and you're like, oh, wow, there's a lot of cool characters in here, then you can go read the Silmarillion. Silmarillion's a bit tough to get through. It's very dense. It's history kind of stuff, but worth reading. Also, we are being visited by the puppy. Would you all like to see the puppy? Kaylee, you want to come over here? Oh, she left. Kaylee, hey, where are you going? Kaylee! Hey! And of course, she went right back up to the front. Whatever. As soon as I stop scratching her to activate the puppy cam, she decides to go back up front. That's okay, though. Does Blue Cross Blue Shield also insure shipping? Maybe? I don't think so, though. If anyone says no, we have problems. I'm actually at about the Maiar, about page 40. Yeah. So at that point, you're not in the Silmarillion. You're in the, you're probably still in the Aina Lindale. Maybe. You might be in the Valaquenta, but I think you're still, you're in the Aina Lindale. Yeah. That's the first part of. So the Silmarillion isn't just one book. It's like 4 or 5 books. It's the Aina Lindale, then the Valaquenta, then the Silmarillion, then the Akalabeth, and then the Count of the Rings in the Third Age, right? So, yeah. I'm a giant Tolkien nerd, though. Big old Tolkien nerd. I've got a whole shelf. Oh, I could show you this with the... Maybe I can get that? No, I can't get that. Anyway, I've got a whole shelf of stuff like right over here. I guess I could do it like this way. Like all those books are Tolkien books. Right behind the R.G. Hainu right there. Those cases right there, like all of that shelf other than the orange thing. The orange thing is a thing of screwdrivers. Everything else on that shelf is artifact stuff. So So, artifact stuff. Places, pieces that are as old as the Middle Stone Age and as recent as, I think the newest thing in there is probably maybe early Ottoman. I don't know. I need to look at that plate piece more. I'm a giant Tolkien nerd. Little known fact: Shane is 9'3". No, I'm 6'3". But I'm not 9'3". That's pretty big. He's no C.S. Lewis. That's fair. You know, Tolkien tends to stick to one branch of mythology while writing instead of just mushing all of them together, right? All right. Let's see who is streaming. And then we'll go do ourselves a raid. I hope everybody liked the future hat. I hope that was an interesting thing, and I hope that you'll get some love out of that in the future. You read a lot of... I read a lot of cargo is being offloaded and trucked across Saudi Arabia to Israel, then reloaded back on ships to go to their destination. Yeah, people are trying to avoid the Red Sea gap, but I think that is ultimately just a show of fear. I don't think that there's actually a whole lot of threat moving stuff through. I think it's mostly just insurance gouging. America's got 3 carrier groups in that area. I don't think anybody's going to legitimately get blown up. But I don't know. I guess I could be wrong. I don't think that I'm wrong, but I could be wrong. All right, who are we going to go raid? Who haven't we raided in a while? All right, I see where we're going to go. We're going to go raid. We're going to go raid friend of the channel and drawer and animator of the Puppy Head Pet. Oh, also, Allie, you said hello and came in, and I didn't say hello back. I apologize for that. My brain just caught up to what was actually happening in chat. So, sorry, Allie. But also, hey, yeah. We're going to go raid Nixalotl, who is friend of the stream, drawer of Puppy Head Pet emotes, and all-around cool artist. Nixa's not feeling very well, so we're going to go bring some love. Thanks everybody for hanging out. I'm glad that we got the future hat in. I like this a lot, and I think it's pretty cool. So hopefully we'll get some mileage out of that in the future. And I'll be back around on Thursday. I haven't exactly figured out what I'm going to cover on Thursday. I think, but don't hold me to this, that it's going to be African kingdoms in the 11th and 12th century. And we'll talk about the Ife and Benin and Mapungubwe. I think that's what we're going to talk about, but I'm not 100% sure. We might just jump over to America, but I think we're going to do Africa. I think that's the plan, but I haven't planned it yet, right? Anyway, let me make sure that I say thanks to everybody. If you are subscribed, thank you so much. Everybody knows who you are because of your cool subscription badges. But I do have people that are patrons. You can see them listed here. Thanks very much for my patrons who don't get recognized in the Twitch chat. Also, you can see people that have sent me books. Thanks for that. You can see the commands if you're interested in those, but don't feel guilty. Otherwise, I'll see everybody next time.